Oh, I'm so glad to be with you this morning. Welcome. I'm going to start with the Oxford Dictionary and how it defines lost as being unable to find one's way, not knowing one's whereabouts, as well as denoting something that has been taken away or cannot be recovered. During COVID, I was kept from my son, who is disabled, who has the cognitive ability of a 2-year-old for 83 days. That lost 3 months can never be restored. My beloved father also died after a lengthy hospital stay. I wasn't even granted a goodbye. I suspect I am not unique in these losses, nor acknowledging the grief that still lives in my heart. At the moment, it feels like a litany of worries. I get concerned about looking at the news. Is there going to be more news about a different strain of COVID, climate crisis, the war, Roe v. Wade, price of everything, inflation, recession, so many other exhausting questions. In these uneasy times, I do feel a little like I've gone astray. I feel like so much has been lost. I feel off course and disoriented. My anchor seems to be drifting across the ocean floor, which causes me to ponder, well, what do we do when we're feeling lost? Many years ago, I worked as a chambermaid in a very fancy hotel. Cleaning one of my first rooms, I found a wedding ring and an engagement ring tucked in a place that they had to have been left, especially. They couldn't have just fallen to the floor. I worked in that hotel in different departments every summer of university and would periodically check to see if the rings had been claimed from the lost and found. They were never even inquired about. Found and then lost love, perhaps. When I Google lost, there are thousands of items on Craigslist. There's a suggestion to contact your local police if you have lost something. There's a children's book called Lost, a few songs, but little advice for when one is feeling lost and is searching for a way to be found. I recall with some humor the lost items I have heard of. I grew up in Toronto, and I remember one item on the news talking about the Toronto Transit Commission, the TTC. It listed they had 4 double bases in their lost and found. How do you lose a double base on the subway? I have no understanding. But I was inspired to start writing this sermon after hearing an interview on the CBC. And the person being interviewed talked about the simple joy of finding something in a secondhand store was exactly the thing that they needed in that moment. It was a eureka moment. I thought, that's it. I just need to be found. It made me think about what it is to be found, to find the right partner, accommodation, food, the right gift, or that thing in the consignment store that makes your heart sing. I think what we all need right now is to be found. I want to take a moment to remind you that it's okay to feel lost. Let us take a moment to acknowledge all the ways we've felt lost over these past few years. I sometimes refer to them as the lost years because, when I think back in time and think, oh, that thing happened 5 years ago, I find myself adding an extra 2 years for these past 2 lost years. I want to make space for the griefs that have built up. And there is time in the forum to talk about those if you'd like to share. We have lost many of our community. We've lost our connection. We've lost loved ones. We've all missed out on so much living. My story of having lost something very dear to me begins 30 years ago when my husband Graham asked me to marry him. He waited until we were at the family cottage, a place of deep spiritual significance for me. We were sitting out on the rocks on the point. He hadn't bought me a ring as he wanted us to pick out something together. And as we sat by the water, watched the sunset, and he proposed, of course I said yes. And then he said, oh, wait, what's that in the water? And he reached his hand into the water and he picked up a perfect circle of driftwood that was just the size of my engagement ring finger. And he put it on my hand and it fit perfectly. I felt like Cinderella. The beauty of this story is that I had spent every summer at Marshall's Bay, 29 summers, looking for a ring in the shape of a piece of driftwood and had never found it. I wore that fragile piece of driftwood as my engagement ring for an entire year. but inevitably the driftwood started to crack and break. And I thought, oh, this isn't going to last. So I took it to a jeweler and had it cast in silver. And I wore that ring for 20 years until the fateful day that I lost it. I was crushed and heartbroken, looked everywhere, couldn't find it, and then realized, oh, but I still have the driftwood ring. I could have it cast again. What was lost was found. So I took the piece of driftwood to a jeweler, and she sent it to someone who was going to cast it, and it was lost by Canada Post. That piece of driftwood that could never be replaced. I had no picture, no drawing, no nothing. And I sat with that grief for years. And writing this sermon, it occurred to me, but what do I have? I have this beautiful story. I have the memory of that ring. And I'd like to think that someone somewhere found that silver ring and went, whoa, this is really cool. I bet there's a story attached to it. Let me turn around that notion of feeling lost. Acknowledging that we are lost indicates we're looking for something. So we could maybe turn it around and think that feeling lost can be thought of seeking. You have to know where you've been to know where you're going. Spiritually, the Christian imagery of being, a lost sheep and then being shepherded into the fold feels really comforting in these times. To feel a part of a community is such a blessing when we've been disenfranchised. I wonder, during the pandemic or when you're feeling ungrounded and uncertain and are seeking comfort, do you ever go to our principles and sources to help you feel like you belong to something, some group? For me, it's the first and sixth sources, the bookends of our sources that give me strength when I feel untethered. I'll remind you of them. The first is the direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Simply the cadence of these words is akin to a prayer for me. Transcending mystery, moving us to a renewal of the spirit. It's if my heart begins to open at that incantation. Our sixth source, our last one, spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Living in harmony with nature. These two sources are like a roadmap, a guide for going from being lost to found. So how do we become found? What is it about finding things? I walk around my neighborhood every single day, and I make it a practice to pick up garbage. I've done this for years. One day, a few weeks ago, I was walking along, and in the middle of the road, I thought there was, an old bus ticket or something. So I ran out to get it. And I was surprised to see that instead of it being a ticket, it was a $10 bill. Finding that $10 bill filled me with elation. It felt like this tremendous gift from the universe. I thought about the person who lost it, and I hoped it wasn't critical to their lives. I thought about Viola Desmond, whose picture is on the $10 bill. Viola was a successful Black businesswoman who was jailed and convicted and fined for defiantly refusing to leave a white-only area of a movie theater in 1946. Imagine how lost she must have felt, adrift in a racist legal system. Now she's discovered on our $10 bill, a newfound heroine. I marveled at how beautiful the bill was. I know we don't hold cash very often, but next time you have a $10 bill, it's beautiful. It's purple. It's got all these lovely colors on it. It was such, $10 made me so wildly happy. It made me wonder how I could be like a $10 bill to somebody else. A definition of found is having been discovered by chance or unexpectedly. I wonder if that's how many of us found Unitarian Universalism. It's certainly how I ended up here. That's another thing I'd love us to talk about in the forum. I've learned how to live in the world that what Susan Cain, author of How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole, calls a bittersweet perspective. Up until this point, I've been talking about the dualities of being lost or found. So much of our world is a duality, joy and sorrow, bitter and sweet, light and dark. We think we are on the road and everything is going well, health, peace, financial security. contentment, but then when things don't go our way, we see it as, oh, it's just a temporary problem. We'll get back on the path shortly. This is just a detour. We strive to get back on that main road. However, I invite you to think about having a bittersweet outlook, which affirms that all of our experiences are the main road, that being lost is part of our human experience. All of the chaos of these times is an important time of our life. Understanding the bittersweet nature of life is centuries old. Artists, writers, wisdom keepers have tried to tell us for decades. The fragile state of feeling lost is the greatest pathway to belonging. Experiencing bittersweet moments, both joy and sorrow, will come to all of us. When it arrives, we have two choices as to what to do. One is to not acknowledge it and invariably take it out on ourselves. That feeling of being lost and that nothing is going our way and I want to stamp my foot in frustration, or notice it and transform it into something else, something beautiful or creative. I've talked about acknowledging feelings of being lost as positive, for they encourage us to seek a path, a way to move from lost to found. Perhaps what we feel is a longing to be found. The etymology of to long for something is to grow longer, to reach for. Longing is a catalyst to create or move or grow or change. The Google Dictionary lists many synonyms for to long for. They include to yearn, to pine, to ache, to wish, to hunger, thirst, hope, be eager, crave, dream, desire, to set one's heart on. I love the action that drives those words. Within loss, there is longing, in which resides such action, such motivation. In the Sufi tradition, longing is a gateway to belonging. The 12th century poet Rumi had a deep spiritual friendship with a man named Shams. Shams was killed when he was quite young. This event threw Rumi into an all-encompassing grief. When Rumi emerged from his sorrow, he began to write his ecstatic poetry. Let me set up a few lines from one of Rumi's poems. A man was praying to Allah. "What are you praying for?" a passing stranger said to him. "Did you ever get an answer?" This shocks the praying man, and he stops his prayer. Shortly thereafter, he falls into a fitful sleep where he dreams of Hither, the guide of souls. And the guide asks him, "Why did you stop praying?" The man replies, "Because I never heard anything back." According to Rumi's poem, Hither replies, "The longing you express is the return message. The grief you cry out from draws you towards union. Your pure sadness that wants help is the secret cup." The world feels very heavy right now, friends, and this is why a deep understanding of the bittersweet nature can really help in life right now. Feeling lost is a longing, a searching, a growing. It is a way to be grounded in a time of great instability. Perhaps instead of feeling lost, we can think of ourselves as seeking. I hope that some of what you seek, you find here. My sister studies the Kabbalah, part of the mystical side of Judaism, and there is a beautiful story that says all of creation used to be one divine vessel that shattered and broke. And those pieces of perfection and beauty scattered all around the world. And our job is to notice them, to bend down, pick them up, look at them, explore them, and then share that with a friend. And the really interesting thing here is the beautiful thing that I find is very different from the beautiful thing you find. But share that with me. I want to hear about those fragments of beauty. For me, it was swimming in the ocean this morning with every size of jellyfish you can imagine. Teeny, teeny, tiny little ones that were the size of the top of a pin, just minute, full-size moon jellies that just were all around me. They don't sting, so they were safe jellyfish to swim in. And it was just a magical moment. Notice the beauty and tell someone about it. I find this so comforting to think of those scattered pieces of magic strewn around the world, just waiting to be found. Perhaps you will discover them in a ring, a tree, a bird, a jelly, a book. Have you read Capital's mission statement? I'm not going to go through it all, but I want to remind you it's in our order of service. And I'm just going to give you the first sentence. Our mission is to build an inclusive, evolving, liberal religious community, which offers a safe, supportive, stimulating environment to those who feel the need for spiritual growth. It goes on to list the goals we strive for. Those beautiful words help me to feel found. There is comfort in feeling found. Where do you feel found? I hope your answer is here. Here with Unitarians. You are my chosen family. You are my people. Ooh, you are my community, and you apparently make me cry. Whatever you seek, may you find it here. May you create it here. May you discover it within and let it shine. For to feel lost is to acknowledge that you are seeking being found. Blessed be. I'm going to invite us all to sing